What is going on, guys? Money Webby here, back again, week 4 with my favorite NFL DFS picks of the week. The NFL season is flying by. We have another good slate here this week. Very excited about it. A few guys at every position. I think it return a ton of value just based on their current salary and the matchup set up very nicely. So before we get going, if you could spam up that like button, really helps me out a lot to get some more exposure on my videos. And if you're enjoying the content, definitely leave a like. Let's try to get over 150 there. And subscribe to the channel if you are new here or not subscribed, so you can get alerted every time I upload and you don't miss out on the videos. We're around 20 subs away from 8,000. Would love to see that. Thank you. Let's hop right into it, though. So first quarterback up, Russell Wilson went absolutely nuclear last week. I think he had like 40 fantasy points or something crazy like that, just in comeback mode against the Saints, where I don't think they'll be in comeback mode against Arizona. This just sets up in a great game environment. Considering it's like the polar opposite of what we saw from Seattle last year, where they were just in these slow-paced games, just running it down your throat. But this year, that's kind of flipped a little bit. They haven't been able to consistently run the ball. Chris Carson struggling with only 3.5 yards per carry, fumbling the ball. Like every other play, it seems like he has 3 fumbles on the season. Rashard Penny is highly questionable for this game. He hurt his hamstring later in the week last week and didn't play. So I would expect him to be, like I said, highly questionable. And if he's out, then they're not going to be able to really run the ball as consistently without that kind of trust in Chris Carson. I mean, they'll probably still give him the ball a good amount, but it's always in the back of their head now going forward. And Arizona is the fastest-paced team in the NFL, running their offense at a very fast pace. So that kind of helps out the upside of an offense like Seattle for them to possibly see some more plays here just in this game environment. And also, Russell Wilson has some added upside here. Lamar Jackson, the same matchup, got 120 rushing yards on the ground against this team. So I think he could chip in a little bit more there on the ground, hopefully, if that kind of breaks out. I mean, typically when he's more of a passer, he has those kind of extra opportunities to take off and scramble when nothing is there. So you always love to see that. So I love Russell Wilson myself here this week. And then we're going to go with Danny Dimes. This guy looked the part his first game out there against the Buccaneers defense that looked pretty good through the first 2 weeks of the season. I mean, a lot of people were saying like, oh, it's the Buccaneers defense, easy matchup for him. But I think a lot of his playmaking was just based off his accuracy and his decision making. I mean, he looked very poised in the pocket. Similar to Minshew, kind of just like, it seems like he's been there before and he's not really fazed by the spotlight, if you know what I'm saying. And in this matchup against the Redskins, it honestly is probably better than the Buccaneers matchup. He just seems a little bit too priced, or a little bit too low of a price here in this game still. Like last week, he was like minimum price, but now he went up a good amount, but he's still priced around like quarterback 13 and quarterback 16 on both sites. So I think he can be a top 10 quarterback this week. It's a top 5 matchup. The Redskins are allowing top 5 fantasy points to quarterbacks. And in this matchup, without Barkley, I think that just kind of helps his possible upside as well, because they're not going to be able to run the ball as efficiently and just not as much without a guy like Barkley. So they'll lean on the passing game a little bit more, and you can definitely do that. We saw Mitch Trubisky in the same matchup on Monday night. A lot of things were just open over the middle, and that's kind of where the Giants make their money with a guy like Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram, some kind of over-the-middle routes, and I think they can beat their matchup. And the biggest thing for me on Daniel Jones is the rushing ability, though. As good as he looked as a passer, the guy is athletic. He can run the football. He went 4 for 28 with 2 touchdowns. He actually had a read option touchdown in the red zone. So that kind of has that added upside for similar to a guy like Dak Prescott, where a lot of his kind of upside on a weekly basis is made off when he gets those rushing touchdowns in the red zone. So if Daniel Jones has that threat in his arsenal, he can always have a huge week. And like I said, the price is too cheap. So I think he's another great play here in week 4. Then we're going to go with Marlon Mack. This is the guy that's always kind of game script dependent. So I only really like to target him when I know the Colts have a really good shot at getting the lead here and winning the game. And against the Oakland Raiders, there's a very good shot that they get the lead here and win the game, or just stay competitive at least in this matchup. So I found a nice little stat to support him since last year. 6 games, we're talking over 20 touches, And in those 6 games, 22.2 fantasy points per game. So very good opportunity for him to get over 20 touches here and return that same amount of fantasy points per game kind of total and have a really good game. So I like him a lot. The Colts offensive line is dominant. They can definitely dominate that Raiders defensive line. Now we're going to go with Leonard Fournette. This is similar. You always want to target the opportunities, follow the touches, the snaps. And Leonard Fournette, as bad as people think he is looking, I think a good amount of that is due to his offensive line. He just doesn't have the confidence behind his offensive line. It seems like he's just kind of like second-guessing them because they're not opening up many holes. But on the one play where they did open up a hole, he had a 69-yard run against the Titans. I mean, he didn't look great besides that. Like, I think it's a combination definitely where almost like Baker Mayfield in the same sense where he is not trusting his offensive line, which is making his play worse. And Fournette is kind of doing the same. If he just hit the hole at like a little bit faster in some senses, maybe there will be something there. But a lot of times he's getting hit in the backfield. So if they can block a little bit better here, the opportunity is amazing. 94% of the snaps so far this year. His receiving total is up. Last year he only had 22 receptions as TJ Yeldon was that receiving back, and so far he has 14 catches this year. So a big uptick there. He's averaging 19 touches a game. Some of those games weren't even good game scripts for him. And against the Broncos here, it probably will be an ugly game where Fournette can get over 20 touches. And I think he's due for some positive regression in the scoring opportunities that he should be getting here. I think he's going to get a touchdown. And the price tag is pretty solid considering the fact that he's one of those elite opportunity running backs with the snap share, the workload share among the running backs, and just the receiving game as well, as he's been pretty active in that regard as well. So I like him a lot. Then we're going to go with Justin Jackson. I'm not sure how popular he'll be as he hasn't really been that great on a fantasy basis, but this matchup is the perfect matchup, I think, for him to have a good game. I mean, Melvin Gordon, the rumors just came out today, actually, that he's probably coming back in week 5. So this is a perfect opportunity for Justin Jackson to kind of go out with the bang. I mean, they're going against the Miami Dolphins, one of the best matchups, if not the best matchup for running backs just based on game script, as the Chargers have a very good chance here in this game of getting up 2+ touchdowns. And whenever that happens, then they're going to lean on their backups a little bit more, their second running back, and that's Justin Jackson. I mean, there's no really need to overwork guys like Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler who have been carrying the offense. So it seems like a perfect opportunity for me for them to lean on Justin Jackson. We saw this similarly in 2 games against the Dolphins. Gus Edwards, 17 touches in week 1. He didn't do much with them, but 17 touches for a backup running back is crazy. And then we saw with Tony Pollard, and he was able to make big usage of those touches. I believe he had over 120 yards and was very good in that sense. And Justin Jackson, he's priced as a backup, really. Maybe not on FanDuel. He's kind of priced up as like a lower-end starter. But on DraftKings, definitely at 4.1K. Very good value. I think he can get 10+ touches in this game. And whenever he's been given the ball, he's been very efficient with it. So I think he can have a good spot here, or have a good game here against the Miami Dolphins. I want to go with Amari Cooper, one of my favorite players just coming into the NFL. He kind of disappointed me, but I think partially that was due to Derek Carr, just not a quarterback that is good at finding his receivers down the field. And now finally in a good offensive scheme with Kellen Moore designing him some good plays, finally looks healthy, more confident out there, and more trusting of his route running ability, which he's always had. And he's put into work. I mean, I think he's a top 5 wide receiver so far in fantasy. And this is another good matchup. I mean, it should be a better game script here. The Cowboys have kind of been beating up on some lesser opponents against like the Redskins, the Dolphins, and against the Giants. So they've been up pretty big in all those games, and it still really hasn't affected Cooper. He's scored in every single game. I think he's gone like 50+ yards in every single game. So he's been doing very well, and this is another game where against the Saints, who are expected to be more competitive, like I was trying to get to. And also Michael Gallup isn't going to be playing this game. So that kind of leads him to a higher potential target share, more upside there in the receiving game. Like, I think he can get more yardage than he's been getting in this game, and hopefully he can get that touchdown again. And he's going against Marshawn Lattimore, which on paper, if you if you haven't been paying attention too much this year, on paper that might look like not that great of a matchup, but Marshawn Lattimore has been actually like a shell of himself this year. He's giving up the most yards among every cornerback in football after being a stud his rookie year. So it's a very strange. Also, I mean, almost kind of reminiscent of Malcolm Butler from when he went to from the Patriots to the Titans. He went from being like a pretty good cornerback against some top wide receivers to being an absolute must-target guy for wide receivers in DFS against them last year. So it's kind of a similar situation. So I think you got to keep the ball rolling against Marshawn Lattimore. And if he does match up against Eli Apple, that's another favorable matchup. So I think Amari Cooper is in for a big game there. And then I want to go with Terry McLaurin. The guy's just been looking amazing for a rookie wide receiver. I didn't expect it myself. I mean, most of the scouts on him was saying that he kind of needed some development. He was kind of just a speedster, really good down the field, but didn't have that intermediate kind of stuff. But what I've seen, the guy can do it all. He can run, seems like every route you ask of him, he's able to run it at a good level, and is going to be another positive game script likely here. I mean, it could be a little bit closer against the Giants, but I think, honestly, the Giants with Daniel Jones are a better football team than the Redskins. So I think Terry McLaurin honestly has his best matchup of the season last week against the Chicago Bears. That was supposed to be a spot where he wasn't able to do anything. You would expect such a great defense that the Bears have, but still churned in a good 60-plus yards, I think he had in the touchdown. And I was very impressive there. So this is probably his best matchup of the season, and I think he can do a lot of damage. We saw Mike Evans absolutely tool on Janoris Jenkins last week, beating him down the field a lot. And the number one wide receivers against the Giants have been going off, the outside wide receivers in particular. So I think Terry McLaurin can have another huge week. And then Tyler Lockett coming off a game where he went absolutely off, similar with Russell Wilson. Just a lot of garbage time, I would say, but still that go-to guy. The target share has been very good the last 2 weeks, 14 and 12 targets in his last 2 games. And it's a really good matchup against the Arizona Cardinals. Like I mentioned with Russell Wilson, good game environment here, a lot of plays. And he's matching up with Tremaine Brock Sr., who has allowed the 6th most receiving yards among every cornerback. So good little stack there with Russell Wilson. And then we're going to go with Darren Waller. This guy, loved him coming into the year. I wasn't really buying the hype during like July, but the end of August, September, when I started to realize that this Antonio Brown stuff is actually real, he's leaving the team, I was like, all right, Darren Waller, he's becoming the number one guy in this Raiders offense. It's always going to be behind in games for the most part. A lot of garbage time like we saw with Jared Cook, even Jalen Richard in the receiving game. Derek Carr is going to feast him the ball. And we've seen that. I mean, he has the highest target share at tight end out of every tight end, which is crazy. This guy was going at the end of drafts, and he has a 30% target share, 95% of the snaps. So elite opportunity for him on a weekly basis. And this is a really good matchup going against the Indianapolis Colts. They just lost one of their safeties, Malik Hooker, so that could open some things up possibly for him. I'm not sure if, I don't think he would have matched up with Malik Hooker, but obviously it's always good when a team loses one of their starters in the secondary. And also Austin Hooper went 6 for 66 with 2 touchdowns in the same matchup. So I think Darren Waller, just the opportunity sure that he's getting and the upside he has, I think he's due for a touchdown as well. So I think he's in a really good spot. They want to go with Will Dissly. This guy's probably going to be extremely chalky, but for good reason. The biggest thing with Will Dissly, he's always had the talent and ability in his limited opportunities that he's had, but he just wasn't getting that good amount of snaps and good amount of routes to really return consistent fantasy value. But now, Nick Vannett yesterday just traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers, so that leaves a big void in the Seahawks tight end play. So Will Dissly before this game was getting 55% of the team's snaps at tight end, and now I would expect that the uptick to maybe 70, 80% or so. They must love what they've seen out of him this year, and for good reason. Even last year, he was very efficient every time he got opportunities, and this is the best matchup you can ask for right after that trade going against the Arizona Cardinals here. They've allowed the most fantasy points per game to tight ends by far, 29.2 on average. The next closest is just 18.3, so a big void there. We saw TJ Hawkinson just running free against him week 1, and rookie tight ends Sibley do nothing. So if he could do something, I think Will Dissly can have a big game here. So a nice little stack with the guys I mentioned. Probably one of the most popular stacks, but I think I want to bite the chalk there with Will Dissly, Russell Wilson, and Tyler Lockett. So those are it for the plays. You got a few guys at every position that I'm extremely high on, have great matchups. Hope you enjoyed the video. Slap a like on the video before you head out. If you did, 150 likes is the goal. Let's see if we can hit that. Thank you. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't on your way out. Hit the bell icon and get alerted every time I upload. Follow me on Twitter @MoneyWebby, all that good stuff. Thank you for all the support. Hope you guys crush it this week. Good luck. We'll see you back here again next time.